What's going on with the Rutherford County real estate market right now? That's what a lot of people are asking because pending home sales have dropped. Does this mean that the market's getting ready to slow down, or what's going on with that? We're going to delve into that and a few other things here on the Murfreesboro Real Estate Report. I am John Turner. I am the team lead of the Turner Victory team at Onward Real Estate, and we bring you the Murfreesboro Real Estate Report each and every week. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into some numbers. Let's start out with our July recap. And this is the number that has everybody talking right now. Our new pending home sales are down 14% from July of last year. Why is that? We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. New listings that are hitting the market were down 20% this July versus last July. Our closings were down 2%, so just a slight downward turn there. List to contract, so the time that it took from going on the market to going under contract, that is, if you went under contract, it was down was up 16%. So it took longer to go under contract. And our month supply is up as well. It's up 9%. So let's talk a little bit more about what's going on with the pending home sales, because that seems to be something that caught a lot of people's eyes. Excuse me. If you look right here in July of 2025, we had 845 homes on the market. In July of 2026, 677. So we were down 20% year over year, just like we talked about. July of 2025 to July of 2026, where we look at what went pending, we were down 14%. So down 20%, down 14%. Our closings were down 2%, just like what we talked about a minute ago. Generally speaking, what we see, if you go back, we'll use 2025 as a trend, but this is the way this is the way it normally works, is we will see more listings come on the market in July than we see in June, and that's evident right here. 2026 broke that trend. It's very interesting. I have a couple of hunches about why it did that, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But the interesting thing about it is, if we look at June, whenever we compare the number of homes that came on the market to the number of homes that went off the market by pending, by going under contract, that ratio is 57.5% for June, which is better than June of 2025. But it's the July number we all were kind of worried about. But if you look at it, using that same ratio, almost 55% versus 51% for last year. So what that tells me is, yes, I know that pending home sales were down, and they were down 14%, but there were not as many homes to choose from. Not as many homes coming on the market to choose from. We still have a lot of homes on the market, and there's all sorts of reasons why some of those are sitting, and we've talked about that quite a bit. But whenever I'm analyzing this, instead of just trying to pull one number out, I'm trying to look at the market as a whole. And I really think, even though I do know we have a little bit of a demand problem just because mortgage rates are up, just the time of year, just a lot of different things. But I think this might have been as much due to a supply problem as it is a demand problem. Now, with that said, our demand has been dropping off. That's normally the way it works right now. We peaked at about 2.4 showings per listing. We are down this week to below 1 showing per listing. So if you're on the market in Rutherford County right now, you can expect about 1 showing on your house every week. Anything more than that, you're beating the odds. Anything less than that, you're a little bit behind. The Turner Victory Team market health score this week is a 43. It is a balanced market, but it is leaning towards buyers. This is actually, I think it's slightly up from last week, if I remember correctly. 1,639 homes on the market right now with a 3.41 month supply. and the 30-year mortgage rate at 6.67. It's kind of been hanging out there for the past 2 or 3 weeks. I thought last week we were going to get a little bit of relief from that, and maybe we did get just a slight bit, but not moving quite as much as what I think most of us would hope for anyway. So as we said, total homes on the market 1639, almost 35% of those are new construction. Of the listings that came on the market this week, 130 of them, 45% were new construction. 120 homes went under contract, and only 25% of those were new construction. So you can kind of see that the builders are leading the way on the amount of inventory that we have on the market, but the number of homes that go under contract, they're about 25% week in and week out of that. Our inventory has climbed. It's been climbing all year, which traditionally it does. But if you look right now, we've kind of leveled out. Same pattern that we followed last year. I would expect us to continue to drop a little bit. And then where we get to the fall, we'll see more of a drop off. But everything looks kind of like what you expect there. The month supply we've talked about for the past several weeks. It's pretty much mimicking what we were last year. We are about 1/10 to 2/10 higher than what we were last year, but pretty close to the same numbers once we made it past that little spring session there. New listings. We talked about this quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I was just talking about for July and how we had a little bit of a supply issue, and you can see the gap there by looking at the chart. We have normalized a little bit the past couple of weeks. We're still down, but not down as much as what we were. But all year we've been down on our new listings. The interesting thing is, and this was the big question mark because July pendings were down. What is going to happen moving forward? Is this a trend? Is the market cooling? Is this something we need to look at? Do we have a crash coming up? All these things go through your mind, especially if you lived through 2007, 2008. We cannot take one stat or just a couple of weeks and start just really leaning upon that. And I'm glad we didn't do that for July, because if you remember last week, we talked about that pending home sales bounced back to exactly the same amount we had this time last year. This week, we saw another increase. It did not keep up with the 2025 number, but it certainly came out a lot better than what we've seen in July. And if you look at June and see this big gap right here, and you look at July and see this big gap right here, this is what I'm talking about. If this were normalized, we would still be running a little bit ahead of last year if you look at those 2 months in a block. So nothing that I'm overly concerned with right now about the market slowing or anything, except for just seasonal. Even the mortgage rates, we looked at this a lot last week, but the mortgage rates themselves did not impact the sales as much as what I would have thought they would have. I would have thought we were in more of a mortgage rate driven market than a seasonal market, but we still have a lot of seasonality to our market. I want to talk about the yearly closings real quick, just because of the time of year we're in. Last year we had 5,351 homes that closed. All year we've been tracking ahead of that. I still think we will finish ahead of that. So at 5,350 there, we're at 3,364. So we're about 2,000 away from there. I would expect, unless there's something major that happens with mortgage rates or the economy or something like that, I would expect that there's still going to be another 2,000 to 2,200 homes sold in Rutherford County the remainder of the year. Okay, so whenever we talk about pending home sales slowing or inventory being down, all those different things that sometimes may sound like a negative, we still are in a healthy market that is producing sales and people are moving. It's not working for everybody, and we go back to pricing and presentation and positioning and all that, but we are in a healthy market. It's just not, the velocity of it's just not what some of us would want, quite frankly. Showings per listing, we talked about this. Unless you are below 400,000, you're not really getting more than one showing per week. It is interesting. We did see a little bump in the 600,000s. So if you are there, there's a little bit of movement, a little bit of life there. But if you look at the overall trend for the showings, we peaked out, as we said earlier, at 2.38. Last week we had a slight bump. We asked ourselves on here, will this continue? And obviously it did not. Now this is a 30-day rolling average, so it's a little bit harder to gauge than if we were getting actual weekly numbers, but it's still certainly appropriate and helps us to see the trends on there. Um, so let me see. Point number one, we talked about the sellers stepped back in July. The new listings were down. Point number two, the market did not necessarily get weaker, which we were kind of concerned about. The market got smaller. Okay, so there was less new listings coming on, so there was less for buyers to choose from. The good thing is on that, if you're a seller and you've been on the market for a while, that means there's less competition coming in. Because we've talked about it a lot that the homes that sell, well over 30% of the homes that actually go under contract in the first week. So without those coming on, it does hopefully make the homes that are on the market in Mid-City a little bit more attractive. So that does put you in a little bit better position if you're a seller. If you're a buyer, there's continued opportunities out there, and I would imagine that there's more sellers that are getting a little bit more motivated as we get into this part of the year. I think sellers see the writing on the wall that they missed the spring and summer market, and that maybe they need to be a little bit more aggressive if they're going to try to get their home sold. Point number three, we talked about that there's less traffic. So that's and that's more seasonal, I would say, than anything, but I do think the mortgage rates are affecting that some as well. So that's what we've got for your Murfreesboro real estate report this week. I hope that that's something that you enjoy and you're getting some good information out of it. We always ask you to please comment below if you have any specific questions, or email me directly at John, that's JOHN, at turnervictory.com. We're more than happy to look at whatever data points you'd like for us to and try to come back with that information. So appreciate you tuning in. As I said, we bring this every week to you. So until next week, we hope you make it a great week. Thank you very much.